Thank you all for coming here. It's really nice to see all of you. This is my senior mastery using Albright Pipeline, and my name is Nathan Miller. If you don't know who I am, then you probably shouldn't be in this room. So first, I want to introduce my panelists. We have my family, my mom, my dad, and my brother. Dr. Mukamal is not here today, but she will be able to view this online. And she was very helpful at the beginning of my project and like helping me figure out what I wanted to do. We have Miss Penn, my informatics teacher. We have Mr. Riley, my current computer science teacher. And we have Miss Caldwell, who isn't here, or maybe will be here soon.
Or will view online. Or can view online.
Or will view me online.
Yes. Yep.
And she is my current computer science teacher. So before we begin, I'm going to tell you a story about 3 MacBooks. And I don't know when this happened because I have a very poor memory, so I don't know how old I was. But I remember my dad had a MacBook, and my mom had a MacBook that was also broken. And then we had a third mystery MacBook, which I have no idea where it came from, and it was also broken. And I remember at the time, as a kid, I really wanted a computer because I was already obsessive and crazy about these things. And I also wanted to play Roblox, all things considered. So I took parts from the mystery MacBook, put it into my mom's MacBook, was able to reboot the thing, get it into the recovery OS, erase the thing, and then I had a MacBook I could use. Now, I did, celebrate with a MacBook. It would break multiple times because the hard drive was bad, and I was probably pushing it with all the heat that was being played on this Roblox game, and with a very old hardware. But all that to say, I am a very intrinsically motivated person. Almost everything I do is based out of an interest of something. I'm not just like gonna solve a problem because it needs to be solved, but because I have a personal interest or stake in that problem. And I'm able to easily hyper-focus with the MacBooks and anything else. And that ability to hyper-focus on things is what makes me, in my opinion, a really good problem solver. And Ms. Penn's entire course is just getting a problem, getting a letter from a client, and then having to solve it. So a match made in heaven for me. And I'm going to tell you about these bodies of work I have done over my time at the Academy during Ms. Penn's course. And the first one we have is the South Carolina Uniform GPA Calculator. And all of Ms. Penn's projects kind of go the similar way, where you're given a problem and you're expected to solve it, and you don't really get much help on how to do that. Ms. Penn is obviously there, but she's not going to reveal to you the answer. You don't get worksheets or how-to guides. You're just told, I need this, so I expect it to be done by this time. And this project was to create a uniform GPA calculator. In South Carolina, we have a different way of calculating GPA, because for students like my friend Cameron, she's basically only ever taken AP courses. If on a regular GPA, all her hard work and effort for taking these more rigorous classes is not actually reflected. So in South Carolina, we add an extra point to your GPA for that class if you are in an AP course, and you get a 0.5 point increase if you're in an honors course. So that's a very important thing about this for people who want to know their specific GPA, or maybe very specific about getting the highest role in their high school. So the soft skills, or 21st century skills, I call them soft skills because that's easier for me, and y'all probably know what they are, was problem solving. This was like one of the first few times where I was told, here's a problem and then go solve it. And differently to anything else, I wasn't really given any help. And our entire class kind of left Miss Penn in the dust. We kind of just we're like, oh yeah, we'll do it, don't worry. And with adaptability, the first time I had tried to solve this problem, I had this very long equation, and I wish I had the equation to show you, because it was like 10 nested if statements inside of a thing with a few calculations and just a bunch of mess, and it was so complicated, and it didn't need to be. But as soon as a new solution was brought to me, I was easily able to adapt and implement that solution. And I get entrepreneurial spirit by the fact that this was the first time I actually had to do a project on my own. I had to learn how to do it. I had to, have the drive to complete it. And so The technology that we used in this was Excel, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with Excel. It's a highly useful, highly popular thing. My brother Joel is in accounting right now, or was in accounting right now, so he knows a lot about Excel. And so here's actually how my prototype worked. This is a VLOOKUP function, which is so much smaller and so much more simple than a long equation with 10 if statements. C2 refers to a specific column in a specific cell. C2 refers to this cell right here, and the grade point, thing right there, refers to the table and the range where we're looking for our data. So if you have like a receipt from a store, you can look down on the first column and you'll see, oh, potatoes. You look vertically down to find potatoes, and then you can look on the next column and see the price of those potatoes. And that's what a VLOOKUP does. It takes the value you're looking for and it returns the value on the next column. And that's what the number E2 does. E2 looks at this cell right here, which is given number 2. So it's looking at the second column, which is the GPA you get if you have a college preparation class. If you were to change this to an honors, it would look at the third column and return that value. Now, something I think is really funny is you notice I have this little like ignore this little red zone over here. That is actually a feature in Excel. It's called hiding a column, and you can just click it and it will hide it for you. But wasn't very didn't really look at that much. I didn't think that was a thing. But this project was overall a success. I was able to create a product I wanted to. I was able to actually complete it, but that's not how every project has gone, so I'm going to show you a project where I actually failed. So you may be familiar with this chart. It is a length for age and weight for age chart, and it is supposed to help evaluate children as to if they're overweight or if they are underweight, or if they're just where they're supposed to be. Ideally, they want to be in the 50th percentile, which would be considered average for a child. And our project was to basically use that chart to analyze obesity data. And we were given data from Nurse Ratched. And we were told, and what's important about this data is that it is confidential. It is covered by HIPAA. Not everyone should be able to have access to this data. The doctors need to be able to have access to the data, and the actual parents, the patients, need to be able to have access to the data. But I, as a random person who's logging into the system, should not be able to access the data. We also need multiple points of access, right? Because doctors need to be able to see overall how obesity was being evaluated in their office. And also, something very important was that one of Nurse Ratched's employees did not know how to type in data very well. So we needed a data entry form that was data validated, so that you couldn't put a name for the year of birth. The program should throw an error at you and say, "What are you doing? Name, age, years, birthdays aren't names." The technology we used in this project was Access, which is a database tool, and is often hated, but I loved it. It was great. Forms were another technology we used, which I've discussed, and where we have graphs. And I know you're saying there's no graphs on this wonderfully made slide, and that's because we're going to go into it. And I will get into the soft skills, but this is the graph I made. Now, I want you to notice that this does have the percentiles for the weight for age. That's great. Okay, that's the first thing you need, the percentiles. But there's no actual patient data on here. There's no any information that is actually helpful for you to learn. And just to remind you, this is what the actual graph looks like, and this is what I made. And this was kind of a failure for this project because this was supposed to inform the doctors about, was your child, was the specific patient or child, was it overweight, underweight, was it where it needed to be, and also give a general overview. And I kind of failed in this aspect to properly make this graph. But that failure was important because it taught me how to fail and that it is okay to fail sometimes. And we're going to stay in failure land for another failure I had, but this time, in my opinion, I did it more creatively. This is the roaming poster tour, or the Fight Me project, as I lovingly call it, where we were asked to stake a claim on an idea. So it could be, I don't know, axolotls are the cutest animal, or Terraria is better than Minecraft, as I put it. And the key with this was to prove our statement with data. So this project required me to critically think about what best meant, because for me, well, for everyone, best is kind of an abstract concept, right? Someone might think that Minecraft is better than Terraria for their own abstract reason. They might think that because Minecraft has made more money than Terraria, that Minecraft is the best and more successful game. And Professional comes in because, well, you'll see soon I had to take a bit of criticism that kind of broke my brain for a little bit. But the technology we use in this project was called Tableau, and it is a graphing software that can make some beautiful graphs, and you'll see that this time I didn't make the beautiful graph. It looks fantastic, it looks lovely. You know, I even like did this cute little thing where I symbolized everything, right? Like red is Terraria and Minecraft is green, and you can see on the original poster that red is Terraria and Minecraft is green, and it's just beautiful and lovely and everything is wonderful. But I remember presenting this to Mr. Easter because this was a roaming poster tour, and I was like, so you can see with this chart that Minecraft has a bunch of classes and more items than Terraria. And after I present, I'm like, oh yeah, that went pretty good. Mr. Easter goes, so which game is best is determined by the quantity of items. And I was like, well, no, not really. He's like, but that's what you're saying. It's like, but not really. It's like, I kept trying to find ways to navigate that to make it sound like that wasn't what I was saying. But I hadn't realized that that's what I was saying. I was saying that the best game is the one that had the most items, which by that standpoint, you could just create a random game and load it with 1,000 items that don't even do anything, and that's the best game. And I didn't mean to do that, but that's where I put the definition of best, is the most items. So we're gonna exit failure land because those failures were helpful for me when doing my own projects. This was the Wikipedia data scraping project. I actually got this idea from my friend Michael. It was like first semester in Miss Caldwell's class, and he showed me a Wikipedia speedrun, and I forget what he did, but I told him to go to Martha Stewart to some crazy thing, and he did it in like such a fast amount of time that I was like concerned and like, why were you able to even do that? But it got me thinking about like how Wikipedia has links to different websites or different Wikipedia articles on each article, and I would love to see an interconnected web of that, like how all these ideas are dependent on each other, and how, you know, Martha Stewart might relate to, I don't know, pick a one. And I'll show you a bigger version of this graph so you can see it. But the technology I had to learn was web scraping, which is what Request in Beautiful Soup is. That's a way of getting data from a website. So when you use Beautiful Soup, it parses HTML text, which is just like code, and it allows you to pick out the things you want. So I could pick out all the links in a Wikipedia article. And the Network X graphs and the PyViz graphs are what I use to actually make this chart. And recursion was used by, which is also a concept I was very scared of, which was recursion. It was used to actually make this thing function because I used a linked list, which is a relation of items inside of itself. So it has parent nodes and children nodes, which is how this interacts. Martha Stewart is the parent node, with the children node being everything else. So this is a bigger version of that graph, and you can see how, like, for example, Martha Stewart relates to the digital audio broadcast, and it goes into weird things like the ISBN identifying numbers, which I thought was so weird that everything somehow relates to the ISBN labeling numbers. And for my final project, which was another self-starter, it is the predicting political bias in text data, which was another senior mastery I did because I am double major, so I did two. And the big takeaway from this senior mastery was the difference between the technical design process and tutorial hell. When I began to do this, the ideal was to do some research, to create a design, and then to prototype, and keep doing that until you have a product you can present. But I didn't realize I was doing this until I got Miss Penn's son to tell me I was doing this, but I was in what's called tutorial hell, which is where you research, and then you don't know if you're well equipped enough to handle the project. So you keep doing research and it leads to more research, and you're just stuck in this endless cycle of tutorial hell. But I was able to talk to Ms. Penn's son, and he did help me figure that out and figure out how I could exit that. And he kind of gave me like the keyword I needed at the time to like break out of that, which was scikit-learn, which is what I use in my entire project to do all the machine learning and cool stuff. But this project required me to manage my own time. There wasn't really like a presentation is due this day. It was your senior mastery presentation date is this day, so everything needs to be done by then. Another thing was project scope. I had to watch out for, at the beginning, I made my project feel like it was like this big. Like I had to do all these things. But like talking to Miss Penn's son, I realized that my project needs to be like this big because I can't do the huge big thing because that's just impossible for my skill level. But I can make a tiny little bot that predicts some data correctly. And the methodology for this project, this is a bit complicated, even though it's like, more simplified, I like to use the analogy of a child, where a child, when first born, doesn't really have any impressions of the world before, but as it observes information, it begins to create biases and begins to incur knowledge. And this is similar to how a machine learning algorithm works. At the start, it doesn't know anything. And when you start to give it information, it begins to develop a bias on how to classify things, how to understand things. And that understanding of things is what allows it to be so helpful in generating images or predicting bias in text. And so I got my data from a Code with Papers research paper that had a bunch of articles, about 40,000, and I fed my AI 20,000 because I had a very bad computer at the time which could not handle managing all that data. But something that was interesting was that my AI was only as good as the data I gave it. And for some of the sources, looking to the data, I could tell that it was mislabeled improperly. For example, NPR was labeled as an extremely leftist source, which is not true for the nature of NPR, for being a centrist organization. So it was that was like another takeaway from this was that that the AI is only as good as the data you give it. So here's my code. I'm going to little nerd out about this for a bit because I love code. First, I import pandas and JSON, which are modules that are used to read in the data. I use scikit-learn, a test train split, breaks that data up into small little buckets that you can give your machine learning algorithm. And a vectorizer puts the data in a term that the AI can understand. And the SVC is a classifier that is used to basically tell the data, is something that is used, that the machine learning model uses to differentiate what the data is. So the model.fit, the first command here, is the training step. And I know it seems underwhelming, but that is all it is. It takes in the training set, the X training data, and the Y training data, and then there's your model. And then you can use a predict text or predict bias function like this, where you first vectorize your text into the form where it's understandable for the machine, and then you give it your prediction and you return the prediction. And so this was a Fox News article that was properly able to identify. The raw text is given here, and the number 2 signifies that it is on the right side of politics, or that it thinks it's on the right side of politics, which is in alignment with how it's thinking. So that's all my body of work, and all that culminates to this, which are all my credentials that I have learned over the years. I am well versed in Microsoft Excel and Access, ArcGIS Online, and QGIS for my GIS courses, which ArcGIS and the science of GIS in general is very similar to data science, where you're putting data on a map that people can understand. And if you ever remember, those COVID-19 maps during COVID were all made in ArcGIS. I learned Tableau and web scraping. Sorry, I didn't notice my mouse was on here. And some of the languages I learned was Python, which is a highly useful programming language, especially for data analysis. Java, which is like a golden standard in the programming world, and SQL, which is used to communicate with databases. And my certifications, I have gotten a entry-level certification in Python and an OSHA 10 certification, and maybe, possibly, I will get a Java certification very soon. So now we actually get into the big thing, the senior mastery. Like, I know all that was a senior mastery, but this to me is where like the real fun starts, where I get to talk about the alt-right. So my interest in this is how people are radicalized. I'm so fascinated with how people turn to specific ideologies and specific ideas and how they turn to extremism. I want to know what role YouTube plays in that, because our social media platforms certainly influence our politics. They influence so much about us already that if our politics aren't one of those things, it would be strange. I want to know why people turn to the alt-right. What is so interesting? What is so thought-provoking to them to want to join it? And my objectives were to be able to analyze and identify pipelines and to visualize paths to radicalization. And the techniques I'm using are web scraping, APIs, which APIs are a way to connect to other applications. So YouTube has a YouTube API, which allows you to ask for data from YouTube, and YouTube will give you that data. And Selenium WebDrivers, and I'll get into what WebDrivers are too, because they're such cool technology. And I really wanted to be able to test my own abilities, test my own theories during during the senior mastery. I wanted to be able to be like, oh yeah, I collected the data. I'm the one who did this. I followed the methodology of this article, and I wanted to be able to utilize WebDrivers, which was a really cool technology I had never experienced before. So this project is going to require some terminology, and this is not a definition of how you might know the word, but this is how it's defined in this project, and how, because in this context, these words might be different to you in different cases, but in this project, ideology is a system of ideas that can form a basis of economic, political theory, promotion, or advancement of an ideology. Extremism is, hold on, my mouse is like completely gone. I'll just do this. Never mind. Oh, yep. Give me a second. I found it. Extremism is the promotion of ideas or beliefs that promote violence, hatred, or intolerance. Pipelines describes a phenomenon in which consuming provocative right-wing political content, such as anti-feminist, anti-SJW ideas, gradually increase exposure to alt-right or similar far-right politics. And WebDrivers, which is the main core of this project, is technology that is used to access websites the way we would access websites. This is very important because you can't just tell a web scraper to pull the data off of YouTube, because YouTube requires a login, requires you to click on videos to watch them, and Beautiful Soup can't do that. All it does is give you a page source. So a WebDriver interacts with the website the same way we would, and it's sort of like a bot, but it's specifically used for testing websites. So, and now I'm going to explain a bit about what YouTube is. So, YouTube is an incredibly huge platform with 2.2 billion active users. Users can upload videos, like, comment, subscribe to their favorite creators. They can watch YouTube Shorts, almost like TikTok. And it's very important to note that YouTubers earn money on the platform through advertisements. So when someone watches their video, they get 55% of that money, with the 45% of the rest of that cut going to YouTube. And so this sort of creates, and this will create, well, I'll show you how this creates an incentive for creators not to be, the most great of people, but we'll get into that very soon. When I refer to the YouTube homepage, I'm referring to this page, which is what you first see when you access YouTube. If you just go to www.youtube.com, you will see the front page if you are logged in. And it shows you videos that might relate to you. I don't use this YouTube account, so you can see that YouTube is kind of like throwing everything at me right now. I'm trying to find and identify what my interests are, or what I like or what I dislike. The up next page is shown when you're actually watching a video. So when you click and watch a video, the up next section shows you related videos or videos YouTube might think you like. So how this all incorporates with the alt-right is that the alt-right is an alternative to right politics. It's not the same as right politics. They're completely separate. The alt-right is also built to radicalize people. Its sensational nature, which, if you don't know, sensational is this idea of a content being over-dramatized or heightened or just overly too much. It's this idea that like content is designed to be clickbaitable. So this is something that the alt-right employs all the time, where they make incredibly sensational content that does not align with reality, because their whole goal is to recruit people. They're trying to get people to, watch their videos because they earn money if they do. And the alt-right is also mostly built up of conspiracy theorists, people who deny reality, or people that believe in all kinds of wacky, wonky conspiracy theories. And I have a quote from the National Policy Institute column, and this is one of the major alt-right organizations. And there are hundreds of these quotes on the Southern Poverty Law Center's website that just show you how horrendous it is. Some people call Martin Luther King Jr. a degenerate and a horrible human being. And this one's even talking about white purity. So this isn't, I'm trying to really get out there that this is not typical right politics. So the alt-right works as Becca Lewis understands it, which Becca Lewis is a researcher at Davenport Society, and she kind of like created this whole big research paper that explains this phenomena. But essentially how it works is a user will watch a video with featured creators, and statistics shows us that when a featured creator is on a YouTube video, people will tend to watch that featured creator. So the user watches that featured creator, and now they have gone a degree into the alt-right. And it goes back to where they're at the featured creator, watching another featured creator, and they keep going down this alt-right pipeline. So you might be at somewhere like, I don't know, a fitness video, and suddenly you're hearing somebody talk about how much they hate women and want to destroy, pick a thing. So this is a helpful graph to help visualize this. The size of each person on here indicates how much of a conduit they act upon other people. So how much they are featuring a creator. Each line represents a link between creators with that featured connection. And the color refers to, hold on. Yeah, and the color refers to how connected that individual is within the own network. So you see that people that are highly connected in the network are darker than people who are just, on the sideline and maybe featured a creator once or twice in their time. And Becca Lewis identifies two links here. So I'm going to show you the first link, which is in red, and we first start with Dave Rubin. Now, Dave Rubin is just an American conservative commentator. He is not anything big or anything important. He doesn't really say anything bad, but he's featured alt-right creators on his channel. And one of those people is Carl Benjamin, or Sargon of Akkad. And Sargon of Akkad is a huge step from Dave Rubin, because he is a white supremacist who actively during the Gamergate harassment campaign, he actively promoted the harassment of women in that whole situation, and all because he was angry that women were playing video games. And Sargon of Akkad has featured Colin Robertson. He's an anti-Semitic white supremacist who espouses hate speech and was eventually banned off of the YouTube platform because he became too much of an issue. And I show you this to show you how this link had how Dave Rubin, who is not terrible, slowly links to Colin Robertson, who's a huge step up from Dave Rubin, because you can see Dave Rubin as kind of like not just like a regular conservative, but as soon as you get to Colin Robertson, you're in a white supremacy land of anti-Semitic hate and all this stuff. So this was one research paper I read, But there are a few that kind of contradict this idea. Specifically, Mark Ledwidge and Anna Zaitsev, they decided to run an experiment. They started with 14 personas, and here are the personas, and over here are the examples of those channels that relate to those personas. Their idea was that they would create these personas and then see what YouTube recommends these personas and be able to tell if YouTube is funneling everyone into the alt-right. Because ideally, a graph like that would look like arrows just pointing to the alt-right of all these categories. So a bit about the research is they use YouTube API to label the channels. So they would collect data on the channel, and only channels that had 30% political content were selected. And those channels, specifically how they determined what something was political, was they had a list of current hot topic issues, and if those videos were matching those hot topic issues or relating to those hot topic issues, they were considered political. It also included channels with over 10,000 subscribers. This was to ensure that their test case wasn't so large. And when the YouTube API failed to gather the data they needed, they used web scrapers to collect this data. So there was only a maximum of 4 labels that could be applied to each channel. So a channel couldn't be given like 12 out of the 14 labels. When labelers were tied, the tie was not applied, and a majority was needed to apply a label. And they had 4 labelers, so at least 3 people had to agree that that it was that type of persona. So we get to this really cool graph. It's called a Sankey graph. It's one of my favorites, and this is another fascination I have. You'll see is I love this idea of interconnected, dependent ideas upon one another. So on this side, on my left to my right, this is where the bot started, and this is where the bot ended up in the up next section. And how we get the number of impressions is we take the A side, the A channel we start at, plus the B side, we divide it by the A side times 10, and this gives us an estimate of the impressions that are given upon that video. So this graph, the big thing to note here is that if we were seeing an effect like the alt-right of people slowly getting radicalized, this graph would have everything funneling into these lesser categories of anti-SJW and provocative anti-SJW. You'd be seeing a lot more of those being pulled into those categories than you do here. But what you see is a sort of one-to-one match, which is what you would expect in how an recommendation algorithm should function. It should ideally be putting the content that you find interesting. So if you like political content, it should give you political content. And in some cases, you can see that the center left column up here, a few of the impressions go down to the partisan left section, and this could be explained by either mislabeling the data or by the fact that YouTube is trying to diversify the people that you see on your feed, which would certainly help with an echo chamber-like effect where you only hear what you believe, and when you see something you don't believe, you deny instantly. So their research was very interesting, and I loved it. And when I read the methodology and looked in their GitHub, I saw they were using the Selenium WebDriver, which made sense because that's the only way you can actually access this data. So I decided to use the Selenium WebDriver as well, and this is kind of how Selenium works. Users create scripts, and the scripts are given to the Selenium WebDriver. And then Chrome has a WebDriver as well. Selenium communicates to the Chrome WebDriver the information, and then the final Chrome WebDriver will access the content for you. Now, I'm using Chrome, but you could use any web browser from Safari to Firefox, but I picked Chrome for a very specific reason, because Chrome has what's called a user directory or a profile directory. And this profile directory allows me to create my own personas where I can have someone named DeborahBot9000 go on YouTube and watch content. What's convenient about Chrome is that once you create a profile directory in Chrome, you're automatically logged into every Google product, and YouTube is a Google product, so I'm logged in there instantly. So the way Selenium works is through targeting strategies. you have to specifically specify what element you want to click or interact or take information from. And I decided to opt with XPaths as they're the most direct method to accessing content on a website. And this is an example of an XPath. I'm going to explain it to you just so that when you recognize it, you won't be too scared by how long YouTube's get. So first we enter the HTML file. We go into the body text, and within the body text there might be 4 or 5 headers. Well, we can pull through an index the first header that appears on that web page. And this is kind of how we target YouTube videos. So I could be selecting the 5th video on the YouTube front page or the up next section. So let's actually look at the code, which is my favorite part. So first we are using the Selenium WebDriver. We have a web element that is imported. This is what is returned to us. This is how we interact with the web. It stores all that information. And the by module is used to specify our targeting strategy. So in this case, I'm using XPath, but I could also use a class name or any number of things. So I opted to put all my things into a class for reusability. So I could create 14 bots at one time if I wanted to, because the class is replicatable. So these up here are called arguments. You see self, you can ignore, but profile automatically sets the profile to the default profile on Chrome, and that's what Deborah Bot 9000 is on. And so first it gets the options that you select for WebDriver. So before you even create your WebDriver, you create an options object which stores all the configuration information for your WebDriver, and then you use the service object, which determines what service you're using. So I was using the Chrome WebDriver service, so I had to use the Chrome WebDriver create service on here. And it's all given to this right here, which is a driver. So the service becomes the service we selected, and the options become the options we created. So the options I created for my product was to start the window and maximize. The detached setting sets the window to shut down when the program stops working. I set the user directory so I can choose which profile is currently navigating the web, and then I set the profile to whatever the user chooses it to be. Now I also created a function for the get service, which is supposed to return the Chrome service. Now I did this because I was considering having to modify the service if I need to add anything to it. So this function was very helpful in that specific case. So the get front page, this is that XPath I was talking about. So you use a find element function, and then you get it by the XPath, and then this is the specified XPath. But you can see this parameter video tells you which video you're going to select. In this case, it's automatically set to select the 3rd video in the front page. But you could select it to be anything, the first video or the 12th video. Similarly, a much longer XPath, this one also clicks the same, clicks the up next element, so that little bar when you're actually in the video. And then I create a quit function to just exit the program when I need to. So finally, my conclusions, I was able to properly build a WebDriver script. I was very proud of that. Selenium is not an easy module to use. It is very difficult. And I was able to interact with the actual YouTube website. I was able to, at least simulate a user. However, I was not able to significantly get any data because of my time constraint. I didn't mention this, but Becca Lewis had been doing her research for about 2 years, and Mark and Anna were doing their research for about 3 years. So they had a lot of time to collect data, to analyze data, to deep dive into this, and I just do not have that much time, so that was kind of a constraint for this project. So, my final thoughts. I'm very lucky to be at this school. I'm very happy I made the choice to go here. I'm very lucky I'm in the informatics class and the computer science class, and I have a bunch of lovely friends. So I'm very grateful for that. So thank you for attending my senior mastery. So dry.
That's all right. Do you have a water you want to grab?
I don't.
Okay. We will at this point, we'll take some questions and comments from the
Candy?
the.
Maybe.
I don't have an extra water. I have a Coke Zero. You want a Coke Zero?
Sure.
You drink it? Okay. We will take questions and comments from our panel, and then we will do the same for our audience. So I'm going to let Mr. Riley go first, so I can get you something
Okay,
straight.
so a couple questions. First, so when you're talking about the YouTube alt-right pipeline, the graph that had the lines, the squiggly lines going up, I noticed that everything that it started with was something political, but when we're talking about the pipeline, you even started with, it doesn't have to start with something related to political necessarily. Do you
Yes.
think that research falls short?
I would agree because, as you're mentioning, people who are watching YouTube don't always start on a political side. They might start. They might start on. They might start like watching just funny little cat videos and somehow get swept into that. So I feel like the research fails on that part, but also the main fact that that would be like a very large scope for the project too.
So do you think that, I'm not familiar with what the Selenium is going to end up outputting, but would you be able to tie this back to your previous project by looking at articles, by somehow getting the transcript and kind of assigning values based on that?
So that was something I was like, and what's funny is it's only like a few lines of code that would do that too. Selenium offers a object called current URL, and that will provide the current URL. And from the current URL, you can use a regex function to pull the ID of that video. You can connect to the YouTube API and then pull the YouTube generated transcript and then feed that to my machine learning algorithm. And I so wanted to do that at the beginning of the project, but as time went on, I was like, I cannot do that.
And then finally, outside of your topic, I thought your presentation was great, like great job. What are you planning on doing in the future?
Oh yeah, I do not actually have that slide. I'm going to go to CCU for computer science. And probably work at Medieval Times with my brother.
I'm going to jump in next because there may be, well, most of y'all are computer science, but I don't know how into technology you guys are, but I'm going to translate a little bit because that was deep. Would you recall, do you recall when we started this, you said that you were, one of the things you were talking about was, I'm concerned that like YouTube and maybe other social media might be actively pushing people or drawing people into an alt-right pipeline, so to speak.
Like a slip and slide.
We didn't really have those words in the beginning before you did research. And in the research that you did you find that to be true or false?
I actually found that to be false, which I was surprised by. My initial impression of the YouTube alt-right pipeline was basically a slip and slide where all you had to do was step on the slide and you just go, and then boom, suddenly you're radicalized. But it kind of became more of like it's just the fact that these type of politics are very interesting to people and people are enticed by it and it's sensational. So that was more of the driving force. It wasn't like YouTube was radicalizing people. It was just people are radicalizing people.
I always love it when a student comes to me with a premise or a claim and they are willing to prove themselves false, right? Because people often feel like that's a failure. I don't know why, but I really love that you had this idea and that the research that you didn't go back and like, oh, let me change my premise now because what I learned isn't true. I love that you found that it was false because, and I think for you that was comforting that it was false, to know that YouTube wasn't actively, trying to push people towards a particular ideology, which I thought was really cool. Will you, just because I felt weird about it, will you please explain why you ended up talking to my son, Jack?
Oh, yeah. So I was talking to Ms. Penn about how I was completely lost, and I was like, I don't even know how to do this product. I pretty sure that when I get up there to present, I'm going to be like, here's my product. It's nothing. And Ms. Penn was like, well, I can connect you to my son if he's available. And so...
And why would I randomly choose my child?
Oh, right, yes. Good point. So Ms. Penn's son, is he still at Clemson?
Mm-hmm.
So he's in Clemson in computer science, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so he's in computer science, so he's basically the expert on this topic for using machine learning and stuff. So when I talked to him, he had already probably gone through this gambit a few hundred times, and so he already knew the exact things to tell me at that moment to get me started. So yeah.
Thank you. I just didn't want to sound like the weird person who was like, "Here, talk to my child." Why? I think you said, I don't know why everything connects back to ISBN numbers.
Well, I found it funny that everything connected back to ISBN numbers.
Do you know what ISBN numbers are?
Okay, I did read the Wikipedia page, but
It's okay.
I'm gonna be honest, I forgot.
Okay. Does anybody here know what an ISBN number is and whether? There you go, Mr. Gibson.
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
have a theory as to why everything? I do. Why everything connects back
I
to
don't
an
know why it
Oh.
does. I just know that it's International Standards Bureau number.
Yeah. So every book, every printed thing, it has an ISBN number. It's the little barcode that you see on every book, right? So most Wikipedia articles reference other texts and reference hard copy texts that would have an ISBN number. So it looks like an outlier in your data because it is an outlier in your data.
I was considering just blocking that from the searches, but I never got around to it because I was lazy.
That's okay. That's okay. But I think it's a really good point because in all of this you're analyzing data, right? And you recognized that this is weird. This connects to a thing I don't know what it is. How do you continue that? What you would have found is that your software is picking up. It would be the same as it picking up the back button, which is inherently on every page because that's how websites work, right? And Wikipedia articles all have references, and if they reference a hard copy text, they reference it by the ISBN number. So that it's not because Martha Stewart owns a lot of books. It's because every single Wikipedia page will list an ISBN number of some sort. So you're right to recognize that this is an outlier piece of data. I just thought that was an interesting one because you get into your other data and there were outliers that you found there. We ran into outlier data kind of a lot of places, and that one just because you mentioned it is I don't know why I thought I would bring that up. See if you can tie these two things together for me. In your Terraria project, the world came crashing in when you realized that you had to define the word best.
Yeah.
Yeah? And you really had not thought at all about best. And then when you were drawing, showing us the connections between Dave Rubin and those other content creators on YouTube, and how we might get from Dave Rubin, whom you called regular, and I think you said conservative, regular, not too bad, right? Are those situations similar?
I would say not necessarily, because in that case, it might be a mistake on my part of not representing Becca Lewis's original ideas as they are. As she puts it, the level of extremism in between those people rampantly increases as they go through those connections.
So what you learned about having to define good, bad for Terraria, can you talk about how that applies in representing the degrees of conservative, what we might consider right or conservative politics versus extreme, what you're calling, what you're defined as alt-right. Who gets to say?
Yeah.
Right?
Because they're subjective.
Yes. Can you talk to us about how you handled that?
Well, I sort of decided to just trust the experts, because the people who have the political science degree, the people who
Okay.
are actually able in their research, are able to say, this is how we are saying, this is how we are identifying, this is how we're talking about people that are all right, this is how we're talking about, this is how we are identifying and talking about conservatives. However, unfortunately, those very smart, eloquent people and their very, very, very good research does not translate well to someone like me, who is not an expert, is not a political scientist,
Right.
is not any of those things.
So you would say that you were just generally using words of like good,
Yeah.
right?
Sort of like abstraction from the original complex ideas.
I understand. Would you say that you have learned? Well, tell us what you have learned about quantifying subjective data.
I mean, I guess you can categorize subjective data, but you can't really definitively say something is completely alt-right or completely, conservative or left or any number of things.
Or good or bad or
because it's mostly an opinion. It's what you view the alt-right as. For some people on the alt-right, they might claim there's an alt-left that's radicalizing people.
Absolutely. I just think it's so complex and so nuanced, and had I not had an enormous amount of respect for your big brain, I wouldn't just let anyone loose with a topic like this, right? I mean, obviously it can become hot button if you are not talking about data, right? And which is why I really have enjoyed your journey through this, and your self-motivated, nature for learning. I think it's fascinating, and I think you handle these ideas very adeptly. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yep. We'll move on down the table. Family, would you like to respond at all to his body of work?
Miller fan.
So my background's marketing, so typically when Nathan starts talking about stuff like this, I just smile and nod.
Uh-huh. I'm his teacher, and sometimes I smile and nod.
But I am just glad we had all those broken computers laying around so many years ago.
Nice. Nice. All right, all right, I knew we were going to have questions here.
I have two more.
You got two more?
If I'm allowed.
Oh, absolutely. Let's go ahead.
So first, what specifically was your article search function, the SVC function, actually highlighting within the articles that determine?
This is where we all nod and smile. Go ahead.
So, what's actually very interesting is in that project I talked about how with abstraction, I just kind of had to trust that the experts were right in this one and just assume that it was working, because I actually never got to find out how that worked.
Okay.
I used KN classifiers and all these cool things, but don't know how that one works.
Okay.
I did look it up, and as I was reading, it was a bunch of calculus, and I was like, okay, I took probability and stats. That's not
Peace
something
out.
I could ever learn.
I wasn't sure if it looked for specific keywords or combinations of words. Did you see anything in the research about that? Or?
I think, right, and this is just me remembering from last semester, it usually called stop words, and how it with the vectorization process, it doesn't tokenize word to word to word. It tokenizes kind of structures of things. So it might tokenize, in a sentence, it might have two tokens, for one being the beginning of the sentence and one being the end of the second sentence. So I believe when it tokenizes that, it tries to identify specific biased tokens, and that's how it classifies the token. And when it sees those tokens being very similar, it tries to assume that that text is that type of biased token.
Okay, that makes sense. And my second question, it's more of your opinion on the issue. So in political science, there's a phenomenon that ideologically independent but leaning individuals are often more radical than those within that declare themselves as left or right. So being inserted into this algorithm, the one with all the squiggly lines, what do you think the outcome would be for somebody? Do you think that, because what I saw was there's left partisan, center left, and then right partisan that took up most of the individuals on the right. Do you think that that would have a similar effect of being funneled into those, or do you think that the effect would be different?
Sorry, can you like repeat your question? I didn't understand what you're trying to ask.
So, people who identify as independent are often more radical than they actually seem.
Mhm.
So, with that,
Your Sankey chart.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, with that puzzle, they started off in certain groups that, okay, here's anti-SJW, anti-religion, and stuff like that. Do you think that being this ideologically independent would have a different impact, or do you think that it would have lie in the same effect?
Well, I'd say if like their actual like undercore like belief is the radical like category that it is, like it's like if they say they're like independent but they're more towards the left, I think they would like get categorized as the left. But I suppose like you have like a radical category of people who are just like independent radical people. So I think I'm like classifying them correctly.
All right, we have a very short time before lunch, like 1 minute. And if you have to go to lunch, or I mean, if you want to stick for a minute and I need to write your pass to advisory or lunch, that's okay. But I'm here. But if you need to depart, you feel free. Yes, Joey. I mean, sorry, James. sorry, wrong Jay.
It's gonna be a very brief one. What was the names on the bottom left corner? I don't remember if you talked about it, but it was a couple slides before.
Oh yeah, those are citations. So I had Becca Lewis on there. That's called Mark Ledwich and Anna Zaitsev.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Cameron?
So obviously we know a couple years ago, or more than a couple years ago at this point, short form content started becoming more popular with TikTok. Several social media platforms made their own. YouTube has YouTube Shorts. Would you say that has any bearing on the speed in which this process is observed?
Yeah, I'd say if the content is shorter, then that'd probably indicate that the the rabbit hole nature is also increased, because just the fact that like short form content is designed to express simple ideas in the quickest way possible. So the radical nature might still exist on something like TikTok, but it's just quickened.
Cool.
Michael.
Yep, Michael.
So the part with Wikipedia and like the web scraping you did,
Mm-hmm.
could that like algorithm you used be used to like calculate how many moves and like in like kind of like a chess term it would take to get from one page to the other in the fastest route?
I have considered doing that because I remember you suggesting that idea when I first made the bond.
Could it optimize a Wikipedia speed run? Yes, it could. Any other questions or comments?
Does Selenium have an application for shorts? Do you know?
For like YouTube Shorts?
Yes.
Mine that I built doesn't interact with YouTube Shorts. Even like blocked it on the website because I didn't want to interfere with my stuff. But you can program Selenium to interact with YouTube with the Shorts.
That'd be interesting to see how different your results would be, including YouTube Shorts with it versus not.
Mm-hmm.
It's only 2 or 3 more years worth of work. Do you want to stay? Well, I will wrap it up by saying thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed teaching your kid for the last couple years, and I know he's going to go do great things. I am going to dismiss these guys to go to lunch and advisory, and if you don't mind, we'll take a quick photo with your family and your panel. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, thanks y'all. Thanks for coming. Yeah.